What I wanted to do a training on today are some of the principles that I believe every man should know by the age of 30. These are some of the things that I've learned up until this point. And of course, the process of learning never ends. The journey never ends when it comes to improving yourself. But these are some of the principles that I have adopted in my 20s, leading me into my 30s now. And I know a lot of you guys on here are pretty young, but even for those of us pensioners on this call, we also need reminders. We also need reminders as well. But the first section is on mastering oneself and mindset. So the first, the first sort of skill that I believe every man should learn by the time they're 30 is how to think, not just what to think, right? Because we're all told what to believe, but very few of us actually pause and take the time to critically analyze, right? To question assumptions and make decisions based on reason, not just emotional or societal pressure. For example, this is quite a controversial life event that happened to every single one of us, but COVID. COVID was one of those, I would call it probably the biggest psyop in recent history. But when that was taking place, there were so many men that never questioned. Forget whether or not you believe in vaccines and whether or not you think it came from bats or the government or whatever. But the very fact that there was a large group of men that just went along, yes, okay, we'll do that. Yep. Some were even driving with their masks on inside the car when no one else was around them, which I find absolutely bizarre. I mean, the level of cuckoldry I believe you have to reach to do something like that. I mean, it's crazy. It really is. And so I believe it's so important as a man, whether you're approaching your 30s or just entering your 20s, it's important to critically analyze things. People that are, for example, very racist across the US or across Europe, people that, for example, don't like Muslims or Jews or whatever, oftentimes it comes from a place of ignorance. It's not that they believe these religions to be bad or whatever. It's because they never look into it. They never lower their guard and actually study what it is that they're afraid of. There's a saying, people will always fear something they don't understand. And I absolutely believe that. When you don't understand something, you fear it or you repel it, right? And being open-minded is one of those things that makes you appear a lot more intelligent, right? Because it shows that you are open to challenging your own innate beliefs, but also it makes you somebody that people gravitate towards. People like to have conversations with somebody that is open, not somebody that's ignorant, closed off, that doesn't want to engage in a respectful discourse, right? So being able to make your own conclusion is so important. I'm sure a lot of us on here have different opinions on certain topics than our parents do, right? I disagree with my dad on certain things, but I also agree with him a lot on other things, right? But I'm not just going to agree with everything. I like to question things myself, right? And some of us, maybe out of 100% unconditional respect for our parents, often buy into their assumptions and never question some of the things that they've learned, perhaps. And it doesn't come from a place of disrespect, when you challenge their perspectives. You can do so in a very respectful manner. But there comes a point when a man really, when you transition from a boy to a man, and that's when you start to realize that your dad doesn't know everything. That's when you really grow up, when you realize, you know what, I respect my dad, and my dad is very knowledgeable in a lot of things, but there's certain things that he doesn't know, or he doesn't know very well, shall I say. And you can, look at your father from a place of respect and, admiration, but you can also make the conclusion that, you know what, in this area, he's not very informed. For example, if you're trying to make a lot more money than your father did, getting financial advice from your father is likely to keep you around the same sort of level from him, or as him, shall I say. Your father may teach you how to not be reckless with money. how to maybe save a lot more money, which is helpful. But for example, if you're trying to go to 50 to 100K a month, it's important to learn from people that have done that because your father will most likely teach you how to be like him, right? This is why it's important as a man to study people that are at the levels that you aspire to be at, derive a lot of value from what they preach, and then make up your own conclusion. Even Jim Rohn used to say this: don't be a follower, be a student. You don't want to be a blind follower. You don't want to be those guys that worship Andrew Tate and everything he says and, never question some of his principles, for example. You don't want to be that guy, right? Take what you like, leave what you don't like. I live this way even when it comes to my own brand. I expect some people to disagree on certain things, even amongst my friendships with some of my friends. I expect some of my friends to disagree with certain things that I preach, and that's totally okay, as long as it's done in a respectful way. So it's important to critically analyze and question assumptions. You don't want to be a blind follower, just nodding your head, okay, yep, absolutely, yep, and never questioning anything, okay?